Don't sit next to me tonight. It'll look weird in the pictures. That's what she said while fixing her lipstick in the hotel mirror, like it was the most normal request in the world, like asking me to grab her purse or check if her tag was showing. I stood there blinking at her reflection, waiting for a punchline that never came. She didn't even look at me, just smeared on that expensive crimson shade she only wears around people who matter. I didn't argue. I never argue anymore. I just nodded and walked out into the hallway, where the air felt thinner and the laughter of strangers echoed louder than it should. That's when I knew something was off. Not wrong. Just different. Like I'd crossed over into a version of my life I wasn't invited to. The ballroom was a blur of champagne and compliments. Her boss shook my hand and called me Jerome. My name is Jarrett. I didn't correct him. What was the point? She accepted her award 20 minutes in. Speechless with joy, apparently. Said she couldn't have done it without so many people who lifted her up through the years. She didn't mention me, didn't even glance my way, and I swear I wouldn't have cared. I could have swallowed that. I've swallowed worse. But then, I heard her voice behind the velvet curtain near the bar, where her team was taking a group photo. I mean, he's harmless, she said. Like, I was 19. He was convenient. My youthful mistake. I just never got around to correcting it. A pause. Laughter. Laughter that punched holes in my lungs. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stared at a silver tray of shrimp cocktails like it held the meaning of life. A man leaned in close and whispered something to her. I didn't catch it, but she giggled. That same giggle I used to hear in bed, drunk off red wine and dopamine. Now it was currency she spent on strangers. I texted her. You know I heard that, right? 3 dots appeared, then vanished. Nothing else came. And I knew right then that whatever life I thought we had, it was a shadow, a costume, a joke I wasn't in on. But that wasn't even the worst part of the night. No, that came exactly 1 hour later. And it changed everything. I didn't go home. I wandered. Down the hotel stairs, past the marble lobby, out through the revolving door where people smoked and Uber drivers honked. I don't even remember what direction I walked in. Just that the air was cold, my shoes were too tight, and I couldn't stop hearing that one word in my head. Mistake. I was her mistake. A youthful one at that. Like a bad haircut. Like a cheap tattoo. At some point, I found myself in the underground parking garage, sitting on the trunk of a car that wasn't mine, watching a motion-activated light flicker above me like it, too, was having a breakdown. I thought about calling someone. But who? My brother would just say, I told you so. My mom would ask what I did wrong. My friends had mostly stopped reaching out after Meredith got her second promotion and suddenly never had time for barbecues or birthdays. Funny how that works. And maybe that's the most humiliating part. I didn't have anyone left to tell. She was it. I must have sat there for 30 minutes. Scrolling nothing. Just opening apps and closing them. Refreshing texts that wouldn't come. Rereading her message that never arrived. Thinking, maybe she didn't mean it. Maybe she was trying to be funny. Maybe. Then my phone buzzed. Not her. Unknown number. One image. No text. At first, I thought it was a scam. But I tapped the photo, and my heart flipped. It was her. Meredith. Back upstairs in the ballroom. Sitting too close to that guy from earlier. The one with the whiskey voice and the cocky handshakes. His name was Carter or Carson or something ridiculous like that. Her hand was on his thigh. His hand was on the back of her neck. And they were laughing. Not posing. Not performing. Just caught mid-laughter. Like they'd forgotten anyone else existed. I zoomed in. There was no mistaking it. That wasn't a platonic lean-in. That was 2 people playing a dangerous game in plain sight. I looked at the timestamp. 7 minutes ago. I stared at that image for what felt like forever. Not because I didn't believe it, but because deep down, I already knew. This wasn't new. This wasn't spontaneous. This was ongoing. That's when I made a decision. Not to confront her. Not yet. That would have been too easy. Too emotional. And honestly, I didn't trust myself not to cry in public. No, I walked back inside. Calm. Controlled. And while the ceremony wound down and people gathered near the elevators, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I looked around. Really looked, and I realized how invisible I'd become. But not for long. Because I was about to make her feel exactly the same way. And it started with a lie. I didn't know what I was doing. Only that I had to do something. Not out of revenge. Not even anger, really. It was more like preservation. Like if I didn't move, if I didn't act, I would dissolve into the carpet under those god-awful ballroom chairs and never come back. So I pulled out my phone, opened my text thread with Meredith, and typed the lie without thinking twice. Something came up. Emergency with my uncle. I left. I don't have an uncle. But she didn't know that. Or maybe she forgot. She doesn't ask about my side of the family anymore. They're background noise. Like me. I sent it and turned off read receipts before she could respond. Then I waited. I didn't leave the building. I just drifted. Up a floor, past the business center, into a quiet hallway full of empty meeting rooms. And eventually, I found one with the lights off and the door unlocked. I slipped in, shut it gently behind me, and sat cross-legged on the carpet like some sad teenager hiding from the world. It was silent in there. Peaceful, in a sick way. I sat in the dark and imagined what she was doing. Whether she read my message. Whether she showed Carson or Carter or whatever his name was. Whether she laughed again and said, "See? He's spineless. Always running." I felt pathetic for hiding, and then felt pathetic for even caring that I felt pathetic. I wish I could say something clicked in me, that I found my spine and stood up and decided I wouldn't be her doormat anymore. But that didn't happen. That's not who I am. Instead, I just waited. And then, about 20 minutes later, the door to the meeting room opened. The lights flicked on. She stood in the doorway in her red dress and heels too high for real walking, clutching her purse like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her face? Not angry, not relieved, just confused. "You didn't leave," she said quietly, like I was a kid caught sneaking dessert. I didn't answer. She stepped inside and shut the door behind her. The silence between us roared. "You lied," she added. "About your uncle." Still, I didn't speak. I looked at her like she was a stranger in my house. And in a way, she was. She walked closer, but not too close. "Why?" That's when I finally said it. The one sentence that had been pounding inside my skull for hours. "Why did you call me a mistake?" Her lips parted, but nothing came out. She blinked. Once. Twice. And in that moment, for just a flash, I saw guilt. Real guilt. The kind you don't fake. But it didn't last. She folded her arms and said, "You weren't supposed to hear that." Not, "I didn't mean it." Not, "I'm sorry." Just that I wasn't supposed to hear it. Like her only regret was the fact that I was present enough to catch it. And I swear to God, something broke in me right then. Quietly. Cleanly. Like a small crack running the length of a glass. Invisible, but fatal over time. I stood up. She flinched. And I walked right past her. Out the door. No shouting. No parting words. Just footsteps on thin carpet and my heart in my throat. But as I reached the elevator, my phone buzzed again. Another message. Another photo. And this one, it changed everything. Again. I don't remember pressing the elevator button. I don't even remember walking through the lobby again. All I know is the moment that photo popped up on my phone, the rest of the world blurred into static. This time, it wasn't from an unknown number. It was from Marcus, a guy I hadn't spoken to in over a year. We used to be friends. College roommates. He was one of my groomsmen, actually, until Meredith convinced me he wasn't good for my mental health. That was her favorite phrase back then. Everything she didn't like was bad for my mental health. Marcus texted one line. "You really should see this." And below it, the image. It was grainy, taken through what looked like a narrow crack in a door. But it was enough. Clear enough. Real enough. Meredith, pinned against a hallway wall. Her hands gripping Carson's jacket. His lips on her neck. Her eyes closed. I dropped the phone. Literally. It hit the tile with a clack and skidded toward a potted plant. I bent to pick it up, hand trembling so hard I missed twice. My vision pulsed, like my own body was trying to block me from looking again. But I did. I looked again, and again, until my brain could no longer pretend it didn't understand what it saw. This wasn't flirting. This wasn't just a moment. This was betrayal in high definition. And suddenly, everything made sense. The coldness, the distance, the fake compliments, the schedule changes, the meetings that ran too long. The days she came home with that fake exhausted voice but still had makeup on under her eyes. God, I was an idiot. I had no plan, no response, no dramatic line rehearsed. All I had was rage and humiliation battling it out in my chest while I stared at my reflection in the elevator's mirrored walls. I looked so stupid. That's what hit me the hardest, how stupid I looked. In my wrinkled blazer, clutching a phone full of proof I never wanted. riding a glass elevator in a hotel full of people who probably heard her laugh and thought we were perfect. And maybe that's why I didn't go home. I couldn't go home. Instead, I got off on the second floor. Not my room. Not her floor. Just a random hallway. Thick carpet, corporate art, the sound of ice clinking from a vending machine alcove nearby. And there, in the quiet, I called Marcus. He picked up on the second ring. I didn't say hello. I just asked, "When was that taken?" He paused. "An hour ago. I was at the event. I was in the hall when they disappeared. I didn't mean to spy, man. I recognized her. And I couldn't believe you were still with her." I closed my eyes. "I'm sorry," he added. "I should have told you sooner." My throat felt like sandpaper. "How long?" "I don't know. I think a few months. She's not even that careful anymore. People know. Some of her coworkers just assume you're separated." I laughed. Not a real laugh. More like a broken sound that escaped before I could choke it down. We said nothing for a long moment. Then he asked the question I didn't expect. "What are you going to do?" I didn't have an answer. But later that night, I found one. And it started with something I hadn't done in years. I opened the Notes app, and I began writing a letter. Not to her. To someone else. I didn't know what I was writing at first. Just that my fingers wouldn't stop moving. There was something oddly calming about the Notes app. The blankness of it. The anonymity. No lines. No rules. No one watching. I wrote like I was confessing to something that hadn't happened yet. Like I needed to explain myself to someone before the world could decide who I was going to be. It didn't start with "Dear." That felt too formal. It just started. "You don't know me, and honestly, that's for the best. But you deserve to know who she really is, and who I've become because of her." I didn't name her. I didn't have to. I poured everything out. The lies. The distance. The way she'd twisted our life into something that looked perfect from the outside, but was rotting underneath. I wrote about the night she stopped wearing her wedding ring and said it made her feel old. I wrote about the time I found a second toothbrush in her gym bag and convinced myself it was a backup. I even wrote about Carson. Though, again, no names. Just him. The man who got the version of her I used to have. Or maybe, the version of her I only ever imagined. It wasn't a revenge letter. I didn't threaten. I didn't rant. It was more pathetic than that, honestly. A soft, unraveling kind of truth. The kind you whisper in the dark because saying it out loud would make it too real. By the time I finished, my fingers were numb, and my chest felt like it had caved in on itself. And that's when I made the second mistake of the night. I hit share. I didn't send it to her. I didn't send it to Marcus. I sent it to her father. I didn't even think. I just tapped his name, hit send, and turned off my phone. Meredith always told me he was the only man she ever truly respected. The only one whose opinion could actually sting. I thought maybe, just maybe, if he knew the truth, it would make a dent in her steel-plated ego. But that wasn't what happened. Not even close. Because 20 minutes later, after I finally dragged myself back to our hotel room and collapsed on the bed fully dressed, my phone lit up. Not with a text. A call. From her father. And when I answered, the first thing he said wasn't hello. It was, "Jarrett, I'm sorry. I had no idea." I didn't know how to respond. My throat tightened. My heart actually ached, like physically ached, hearing a voice that sounded genuinely on my side. He continued, "Come to my office tomorrow. Alone. We need to talk about everything. About her. About you. About the money." That last word hit me like a brick. The money? What money? I tried to ask, but he cut the call short. Said he couldn't speak freely. That too many ears were always listening. And then he hung up. Just like that. I sat there staring at the dark screen in a room that suddenly felt colder. What did he mean? What money? What was he talking about? I turned toward the bathroom, and there she was, Meredith, standing in the doorway wrapped in a towel, makeup gone, hair damp from the shower, looking at me like I was a puzzle she'd already solved. "Who was that?" she asked. I lied. Again. No one. But this time, I didn't even feel bad about it. Because suddenly, I wasn't just the guy who got cheated on. I was the guy who knew something she didn't. And that changed everything. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept replaying the call. His voice, his words, the tone. That strange pause before he said the word money. I didn't even know what I wanted it to mean. Just that it had to mean something more than what I thought I knew about her. Something bigger than just cheating. The room was cold. Meredith had cracked the window open because she claimed hotel rooms always smelled like stale ambition. She fell asleep fast, as if nothing had happened. As if we hadn't stood face to face just hours earlier, staring through each other like two strangers caught in the wrong movie. I watched her breathe, her back to me, calm, unbothered. She always slept like that, peaceful, untouched by consequence. And me? I lay there stiff as stone, phone face down on the nightstand, fingers twitching to turn it over, to reread that message from her dad, to convince myself it was real. By morning, I was already dressed by the time she woke up. "You're up early," she muttered groggy. "Couldn't sleep," I said, buttoning my shirt. She rolled over and checked her phone, probably hoping for a good morning text from her mystery man. Her face didn't flinch, so either he hadn't messaged her yet, or she was better at hiding it now. She didn't ask where I was going. She didn't care. That's how far we'd fallen. You could disappear and nobody would notice until they needed something ironed. I took a cab to the address her father texted me that morning. A quiet law office on the outskirts of the city. Not his usual workplace. This one was private, discreet. The kind of place where wealthy people go to clean up messes without press releases. He opened the door himself. He looked older than I remembered. More tired. Less like the intimidating man Meredith always warned me to be sharp around. His tie was undone. His eyes, red-rimmed and heavy. And when he shook my hand, it wasn't firm and cold like it used to be. It was gentle, human. He didn't waste time. "She's been hiding money," he said before I could even sit. I blinked. "What?" He gestured toward a file on the desk. "She siphoned nearly $37,000 into a separate account this year. Started right after her last promotion. She moved it in small, untraceable transfers, 43 of them, to be exact." I sat slowly, like if I moved too fast, I'd break something. He pushed the folder toward me. "You're not listed on any of it. But you should have been." My heart started pounding. "How do you know all this?" "I used to do her books," he said. "Back when she let me. I got suspicious when she started blocking my access to certain accounts. I hired a private auditor. Found everything 2 weeks ago. I didn't know whether to believe it." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Because until last night, I thought you were part of it." That hit me harder than it should have. He genuinely thought I was involved. Like I could have helped her steal. Like I had that kind of spine. "I'm not," I whispered. "I know that now," he said. "You're not clever enough to be that complicit." Ouch. But fair. He leaned back and sighed, rubbing his temples. "Look, I'm telling you because I think she's planning something. She didn't move that money for fun. Something's coming. Divorce. Disappearance. God knows what." My throat went dry. "What do I do?" He looked me straight in the eye. "Start protecting yourself. Quietly. Don't tell her what you know. Let her think you're still asleep." I nodded slowly. "And one more thing," he added, lowering his voice. "You're not the first man she's done this to. But you might be the first one smart enough to do something about it before she finishes the job." I walked out of that office with the folder tucked under my coat, like it was radioactive. Because maybe it was. I didn't go back to the hotel. I didn't call her. I just sat at a coffee shop, staring at a printed list of her hidden transactions, wondering how many more lies I hadn't caught. And that's when the phone rang again. Not her dad this time. Not Marcus. Unknown number. And when I answered, the voice on the other end didn't say hello. It said, "If you value your safety, stop asking questions." Then the line went dead. I sat frozen at the table, the cappuccino I ordered 30 minutes ago now stone cold in my shaking hand. "If you value your safety, stop asking questions." That voice wasn't angry. It wasn't loud. It was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that meant whoever was on the other end had done this before. Said those exact words to someone who hadn't listened. Someone who maybe disappeared. I looked around the cafe like a paranoid idiot, scanning faces, checking reflections in the windows. No one looked at me. No one even noticed I was alive. Just the same old music playing overhead and a barista shouting someone's name wrong. I left a tip I couldn't afford and walked out into the wind. I didn't go home. Didn't go to the hotel either. Instead, I called the one person I never thought I'd call again. Lana. My ex. The one before Meredith. The one I left for Meredith. It took 4 rings. "Jarrett," she said, voice hesitant, confused. "I need your help," I said, and just hearing myself say it made me feel like I was made of paper. I met her an hour later at a public park. Middle of the day. Wide open. I didn't trust buildings anymore. That voice had burned itself into my skull. Lana looked different. Stronger. Older, but not in a bad way. She didn't hug me, just nodded and sat down on the bench beside me like we were coworkers in a very weird office break room. I thought you were living the dream, she said. Married to the perfect woman. I flinched. She noticed. Guess not. No, I admitted. Not even close. And I told her everything. Not everything, but enough. The lie at the gala. The photo. The call from her dad. The hidden money. The voice on the phone. She didn't interrupt. She didn't judge. She just listened the way I forgot people could. Okay, she said finally, tapping her fingers on her knee. You're in over your head. I know. You're also an idiot. Also true. But you're not crazy. I looked at her, and for the first time in weeks, someone actually looked back at me like I wasn't broken. Like I hadn't done this all to myself. Lana had connections. She always did. She used to freelance for a tech firm that did cybersecurity for divorce lawyers and startups trying to hide their burn rate. She made one call, scribbled a name on a napkin, and told me, if anyone can trace that voice, it's this guy. I left that meeting with something I hadn't felt in weeks. Clarity. Maybe I wasn't powerless. Maybe I didn't have to sit back and wait for her next move. Maybe I could finally stop being the guy who just reacts. That night, I didn't go back to the hotel. I waited until after midnight. Then I used the spare key card Meredith didn't know I still had, and I let myself in. She was asleep. Of course she was. Hair perfectly messy. Phone on the charger. Blissfully unaware. I didn't touch her. Didn't wake her. I just walked over to her bag and pulled out the folder I knew would be there. The one I saw her take from the dresser earlier that week when she thought I was in the shower. It was thin. Just 5 sheets of paper. But when I read what was on them, I nearly dropped it. She'd already filed. Divorce paperwork. Dated 2 weeks ago. Filed under her maiden name. She wasn't waiting to leave me. She'd already left. And the final blow? In the declaration, she claimed we'd been legally separated for 6 months due to irreconcilable emotional abuse. Me. Abusive. I stumbled back from the bed like I'd been punched. She was rewriting history. She wasn't just erasing me. She was painting herself as the victim. And I realized everything I thought I knew about her. It wasn't even the beginning. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a setup, and I was already halfway buried in it. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was scared anymore. That feeling had burned itself out. I was just numb. The kind of numb that comes after being hit too many times to flinch. The kind of numb that makes you think, I'm not even sad anymore. I'm just done. She was still asleep when I left. I placed the folder back exactly where it was. Took nothing. Said nothing. I wanted her to think I was still playing the fool a little longer. Not for revenge, but for space. I needed time to move without her seeing the pieces shift. I checked into a cheap motel under a fake name and called the lawyer Lana recommended. A woman named Clarice. Sharp as a razor, no small talk. She read through the scanned divorce papers I sent and said, she's building a case against you. This is more than infidelity. She wants a narrative. Can we stop her? I asked. We don't stop people like her, Clarice said. We outmaneuver them. And that's exactly what we did. In the following weeks, I gathered everything. Bank statements, texts, photos, testimonies from coworkers and friends who'd seen her with Carson. Even an old therapist note showing she was the one who insisted I stay home and focus on her. Clarice built the case like a fortress. Quietly, cleanly, without rage. And just before Meredith could serve me those divorce papers and walk away looking like the martyr, we served her first. Not just with a counterclaim. With a full-blown fraud investigation attached to her name. She was blindsided, furious, humiliated. But the best part? I wasn't there to see it. Because while the drama unfolded in boardrooms and inboxes and courtrooms, I was already gone. I moved out of the city, cashed in some old savings, started remote work at a quiet cabin rental spot up north, helping manage bookings, fix heating units, clean snow off rooftops. Simple stuff. Human stuff. And for the first time in years, I slept through the night. I still think about her sometimes. Not with anger. Not even pain. Just with clarity. Like remembering a place you used to live in but would never return to. Not because it was evil, but because it made you feel small. And me? I'm not small anymore. Last I heard, Meredith tried to spin the whole thing into some story about jealous exes and toxic men, but the damage was already done. Her company didn't want the scandal. Carson ghosted her the moment subpoenas showed up. Her dad? He cut her off completely. Funny how quiet it gets when the lies run out of room. Lana checks in sometimes. Not like a romance thing. Just real kindness. Real friendship. She told me once, "You didn't deserve what happened, but you deserve to wake up." And she was right. I'm not bitter. Not broken. Just awake. And honestly, that's better than I ever thought I'd be.